Good afternoon, ma'am. Could you please state your name and provide your date of birth?
Michelle K. Lidster, 11.
Thank you, Ms. Lidster. And counsel for Ms. Lidster, if you could please announce.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ravinder Arora on behalf of Ms. Lidster.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Arora. And then for the state, please.
Barbara Paris-Gondola for the state, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Paris-Gondola. So, Ms. Lidster, you are here on a Superior Court new case. I find probable cause for the allegations of 1 count of fraudulent schemes, a Class 2 felony, 1 count of aggravated taking the identity of another, a Class 3 felony, 3 counts of forgery, possession of a forged instrument, which is a Class 4 felony. Mr. Arora, do you wish to be heard regarding probable cause, release conditions?
On release conditions, please, Your Honor.
Okay, certainly.
We're asking that she be released to pretrial services with an ankle monitor. She actually has a hearing coming up next week for her release conditions on another case that's all of these basically arose out of the same circumstances. She has 2 other cases. One has a $5,000 bond. There's a hearing coming up regarding that on Friday. And then on the 5th, we've got a hearing in her other case for prohibited weapon possessor where we're trying to get her bond reduced there. She's got a $30,000 bond already in that case. It's the terms of that bond or those release conditions say that if she pays a bond, she would be on pretrial services with an ankle monitor. Given the concerns raised by the issues or the allegations in this case, I believe that pretrial services, home detention with an ankle monitor would suffice to address all those concerns. She has very limited means. She actually hasn't even hired me for this case yet. That's why I'm only appearing for the IA. Her family is trying to see if they can afford to retain me for her additional cases, but I did agree to appear for this for her anyway. So her means are limited. That's part of what we're addressing in the other case. If the court posts an excessive bond, it'll just effectively act as a financial barrier. So we believe that release to pretrial services with the ankle monitor is appropriate, and that's what we'd ask the court, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Arora. Before I hear from the state, Mr. Arora, let me ask you. So your client's currently being held on bond in the other conditions. She's not on release. She hasn't paid the bonds. Is that correct?
She has not. She could not afford to pay it. That's why we've filed a motion to modify the bond in that case and to have it reduced. We have a hearing coming up on that on the 5th. So that's why I'm hoping that this court will just set it for the pretrial services with the electronic monitoring. That way, if she's able to pay the lowered bond in that case, she can get released and comply with those conditions. Okay.
And it was a total of $35,000. Is that? Am I?
$30,000.
I did it.
Sorry. Yes, it is $35,000 because she has a $5,000 bond on the third case.
On the third case. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Arora. These all
arose out of the same incidents that are described in there. They're essentially all tied together, but they're being handled in 3 separate cases.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Arora. Ms. Paris-Gondola, based on what Mr. Arora said, what's the state's position?
Well, Your Honor, I knew this was a page 2. I didn't know specifically what bonds were already holding her. I mean, I knew that had to be the case with it being a page 2, but in my recommendation is for $50,000 secured because I was evaluating the extensive nature of these fraud schemes. And the first time I've read how a police department gets the U.S. Postal Service involved because they're just not used to it being this extensive, is the basis to protect further victimization of people. And I also noted from the history check that my legal assistant did that I don't know if what kind of time she has served, what periods of time she's been incarcerated. So I know some of these felony convictions that were found are from a while ago, 2011 range. But for felonies are for the similar kind of crimes that are trafficking stolen property, fraud schemes, ag taking ID, and then another ag taking ID in 2010, forgery 2002. So I understand they're old, and then she has a slew of misdemeanors as well. So older, but you get my drift. So that was the basis of when I reviewed just thinking that a higher bond was appropriate. Thank you, Your Honor.
I see. Thank you, Ms. Paris-Gondola.
And, Your Honor, may I add a final comment on that?
Certainly.
I would just note that the nature of the charge is that the Supreme Court has specifically said that the nature of the charge is not an appropriate basis by which to set the bond, that it should be done based on risk evaluation. According to the risk evaluation in her other case, She came in at a level 3 on both of the metrics, which puts her at a moderate risk. The Fair Justice Project, whose publication through the Supreme Court was the basis for the Rule 7 release conditions guidance that's published in the Rules of Criminal Procedure, specifically says that people who are considered a moderate risk should be released to pretrial services. And we certainly understand that there are concerns raised over the allegations here. And we're not trying to downplay or mitigate those, but more cash is not what's going to make that situation better. Keeping her under supervision is what will make that situation better. And the court is mandated to place least onerous conditions that get her to comply. Because of that, and because of her very limited financial means, we are asking that the court simply release her pretrial services. She still will have to pay the other bonds before she can get out.
Thank you, Mr. Arora. And Ms. Perez-Gondola, does the state wish to respond to that?
I'm not sure what assessment. I can appreciate that, but I also know the pretrial service assessment that I got to see has a max scoring, high for failure to appear, high for new criminal activity score. So I got to look at something different.
And I'm speaking about the one that I got in the first case that was charged for her, which is, just for the court's record, I can tell you it is CR 2024-127083. So I'm referring to the evaluation that was submitted with her initial court papers in that case.
I believe, yeah. I'm not saying it's not. I totally understand. I wasn't aware of it, but I did see a different type of highlighting of an assessment.
Okay.
And, Your Honor, we will be addressing all the facts related to this case as well at her hearing on the 5th to modify that bond. So all of those things will be considered by the judge at that time. And all of these cases are related. She was arrested at one time for all of the offenses that basically are related to these 3 cases.
Okay, and it appears there actually it appears that this is a 4th case, unless, just a moment.
Well, she has a probation violation on the 2011 one, so that would technically be the 4th case.
Okay, all right. Okay, just one moment, and I will tell you my decision. Okay, so I appreciate what both counsel have had to say. I have considered that as well as the case itself. So, Ms. Lidster, what I'm going to do in this case, your attorney had asked for just a release. I can't do that, and the reason I can't do that is because I can't have a release in one case, but you have bonds owing in another case, because then we've got a problem in the system, and if you weren't able to pay those bonds, you wouldn't be transported to your next court date. It would show as a fail to appear. Not to mention, if you're not able to pay the bond right now, it would mean that you're not going to get any sort of time served when you're in custody right now.
Yes, sir.
So with that said, because I find that the $35,500 between your 2 other cases and your probation case, I think that is sufficient in my opinion. So I'm just going to set a $50 bond in this case. It's a placeholder bond, and that means, again, if you're not able to pay that, so now it's a combined total of $35,550. If you're unable to pay that, then as I stated before, it allows them to transport you. It gives you time served as well.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So if you are able to pay your total bonds between all 4 matters, you will be released. You're then promising to go to court on all of your court dates. You'll see pretrial services for supervision, and you will have an electronic ankle monitor installed. You also must comply with the standard conditions and restrictions of release. In addition, you're not to return to the scene of any of alleged crimes. You're not to initiate contact with any alleged victims, complainants, or witnesses, or have any physical contact with any alleged victims. You're not to have any contact with any co-defendants, and you're not to possess any weapons. Mr. Arora, do you have any questions?
None, Your Honor.
Okay. And Ms. Lidster, normally I'd give you an opportunity to be heard right now. However, I imagine your attorney would recommend you not speak right now, but just to let you know. Am I correct, Mr. Arora, on that?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yes. And then, Ms. Perez-Gondola, does the state have anything further?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ms. Litster. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much, Rona. Have a great day.